Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio Story 5.
If you have ever fallen for a sophisticated email phishing scam or, even just clicked a link you instantly regretted, you might think you were beaten by modern technology.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Right. You might blame the algorithm or the slick graphic design or maybe just the sheer speed of the internet. But the psychological vulnerability that modern hackers exploit today, that sudden spike in panic.
The rush to fix a terrible mistake.
Exactly. That appeal to authority. That is the exact same vulnerability a Chinese street performer used to rob government officials blind hundreds of years ago.
It's wild to think about. We tend to think of human psychology as, well, something that evolves right alongside our technology.
Yeah.
But the source text we're diving into today proves otherwise.
It really does.
We are looking at a first-hand account from the classic Chinese text, Strange Tales, from a Chinese studio. It was written by Pu Songling, and the specific story is called Stealing Peaches.
Yeah, and it is a complete masterclass in manipulation.
Truly. The central question we're going to explore through this text is just so fascinating.
Yeah.
How do you use guilt and ego to con the most powerful men in a city, in broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses? Let's establish the setting first, because the power dynamics here are everything.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The event is called Yanshun. It was a traditional spring banquet held the day before the Spring Festival. And the physical location of this Yanshun is crucial. It takes place directly at the provincial official's office.
Right in the belly of the beast.
Exactly. The courtyard is just packed shoulder to shoulder with merchants, performers, ordinary citizens. But sitting in judgment of all this, facing east to west, are four intimidating government officials dressed in these striking red robes.
And we should clarify, in this era, that red robe isn't just a fashion choice, right?
Oh, not at all. It is a very visual symbol of absolute, unquestionable state authority. I mean, they have the power of life and death over a common street performer.
The stakes could not be higher. And the narrator of our source text, he's actually just a child at the time, brought along by a friend. So through his eyes, we get this vivid description of sheer sensory overload.
Yeah, the atmosphere is intense.
The drums are deafening. The crowd is this massive, crushing wall of bodies. It feels like a powder keg of noise and expectation. And then, stepping right into the middle of this chaos, is a man and his son.
The text actually notes that the son has unkempt, disheveled hair.
Right, and they're carrying a heavy load in a trunk. So they approach these four red-robed officials. Okay, let's unpack this. The officials send a subordinate down to ask the performer what his specialty is.
And his answer really sets the hook for the entire con. He doesn't claim to juggle or breathe fire or anything standard.
No, he swings for the fences.
He really does. He tells the authorities that he can invert biology. He claims he can literally reverse the natural order of the seasons on command.
See, I am struggling with the logic of that opening move. He makes this massive reality-bending claim before he even knows what the officials are going to ask for.
Yeah, it seems reckless.
Right. What if they asked for a summer melon or, I don't know, a specific autumn leaf? The text specifically notes that it is early spring and the solid winter ice hasn't even melted yet. Isn't he taking a massive statistical risk by letting the officials choose the test? This is like asking a modern illusionist to produce a live, blooming sunflower out of a snowbank.
It sounds like a huge risk, but he is actually creating a forced choice through psychological framing.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, by claiming to invert the current season, which, as you said, is a freezing, icy early spring, he is heavily steering the officials toward demanding a fruit known for needing warmth and vitality. So, predictably, they demand a peach.
Ah, I see.
And this is where the performer's brilliance really shines. Because he doesn't just confidently pull a peach out of a hat. He utilizes theatrical reluctance.
Yes. He complains. It's so funny. He takes his own clothes, covers his trunk as if he's suddenly cold or defensive, and acts deeply resentful about the whole thing.
He's playing the victim.
Exactly. He tells the crowd that the officials are being totally unreasonable because the ice is still solid, but he layers in this brilliant bit of self-preservation. He says he worries that if he doesn't comply, these powerful men sitting right there will be angry with him.
Yeah, it's a very calculated power play. He is simultaneously lowering the audience's expectations by emphasizing the sheer impossibility of the task, while heavily flattering the egos of the officials.
Which isolates them, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
He is publicly stating, I am a victim of your immense power. You are forcing me to do the impossible.
And so now the crowd is watching the ruling class basically bully a peasant, And then the accomplice steps in. The son becomes the voice of reason.
Right. He reminds his father that he already took the stage and can't back out now.
It forces the father to reach a logical yet completely absurd conclusion. He declares that since it's freezing on Earth, the only place a peach could possibly exist right now is in heaven, specifically in Wang Mu's garden.
Right, and for some context here, Wang Mu is the Queen Mother of the West in Chinese mythology. Her heavenly garden is famous for the peaches of immortality.
So he's not just picking a random celestial spot.
Exactly. By invoking her, the performer is elevating the stakes from a simple street trick to an actual cosmic heist. He tells the crowd he simply must steal a peach from the sky.
Okay, this brings us to the actual mechanics of the illusion, because this is where the text just gets wild.
Oh, it's incredible.
The father reaches into his trunk and pulls out a coil of rope dozens of meters long. He takes one end, throws it up into the empty sky, and it stays suspended, as if it caught on an invisible hook.
Just hanging in midair.
Yeah. He keeps tossing the slack upward until the entire rope into the literal void. He tells the crowd he's too old and heavy to climb, so he orders his son to go up the rope.
And the son actively resists.
He does. He points at the thin rope disappearing into the sky and says that if it snaps, his bones will be shattered on the ground.
Then the father offers a massive bribe. He promises his son 100 pieces of gold and a beautiful wife if he steals the peach. The psychological layering here is just intense.
Because the audience is no longer trying to solve a puzzle.
Exactly. They are watching a father coerce his child into a potentially fatal situation.
And the narrator gives us this chilling visual of the boy climbing the rope. He goes up hand over foot, spinning around, quote, like a spider clinging to a thread, unquote, until he disappears into the clouds.
It's such a vivid image.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the crowd and the officials are just left staring up at an empty rope hanging from the sky.
Yeah.
And then comes the first climax. A peach, described as the size of a bowl, drops from the void.
A bowl-sized peach.
Yeah. The father catches it and happily presents it to the red-robed officials.
And the source notes that the officials pass this peach around among themselves for a long time. They inspect it closely, and they literally cannot tell if it is a real peach or just a flawless fake. They asked him to invert biology, and he delivered.
But just as the crowd relaxes, the tone violently shifts. The rope, which has been the anchor of this whole spectacle, suddenly falls completely to the ground in a heap.
It just collapses.
Yeah. The father panics, screaming that someone in heaven has cut the rope and his son has nothing left to hold on to.
And this is where the illusion transitions immediately into horror. First, an object falls from the sky and hits the courtyard floor. The crowd looks, and the text states it is the son's severed head.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. Shortly after, a foot falls. Then limbs and various body parts just rain down until there is nothing left of the climbing boy.
The father, he immediately begins weeping bitterly, rushing around the courtyard to gather the severed limbs. He quickly places them into his trunk and just slams the lid shut.
And then he walks right up to the officials, kneels in the dirt, and cries out that his son was killed for one single reason: to get them a peach. He says, "I only had this one son who followed me everywhere, and now because of your strict orders, he has suffered this horrific disaster."
Wow. He weaponizes their own authority against them. You powerful men just murdered my child because you selfishly wanted out-of-season fruit. That is an immense gamble. Couldn't they just have his guards arrest the man for causing a disturbance?
They could. But the performer relies on a psychological concept known as cognitive dissonance, specifically cognitive dissonance in authority figures.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, these officials view themselves as righteous, powerful leaders. Suddenly, they are publicly accused of causing a grotesque tragedy. To admit the trick is fake would require them to admit they were just fooled by a peasant.
Which their egos won't allow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to execute the man would make them look like tyrants who kill grieving fathers. Their egos need an immediate pressure release valve to resolve that tension.
And the father provides that exact valve. He begs them for money to help bury his boy. He promises that if they show him pity and fund the funeral, he will repay their kindness in the afterlife.
And it works perfectly. The officials reach into their robes and pay him. The text actually notes they each have gold to bestow.
The final twist of the knife.
Oh, this is the best part.
The father takes this gilt gold, this small fortune, and wraps it securely around his waist. Only when the money is locked away does he step up to the trunk.
Safe and sound.
Yep. He knocks on the wood and calls out, "Baba," or "Eight, my son, why haven't you come out to thank them for the reward?"
And instantly the lid opens. The boy, with his disheveled hair completely unharmed without a scratch on him, pops his head right out of the trunk.
The boy steps out and bows to the north, respectfully thanking the officials for their generous donation.
So the crowd goes wild, and the performer leaves wealthy.
The legacy of this trick goes far beyond a single winter festival, though. Our narrator notes that the sensory shock of this performance burned itself permanently into his memory. But more importantly, he mentions later hearing that the White Lotus sect was reportedly capable of performing this exact illusion.
Right, and the inclusion of the White Lotus sect in the source text is vital historical context.
Wait, so who were they exactly?
The White Lotus was a secretive, millenarian Buddhist movement in China. They frequently orchestrated rebellions against the ruling dynasties. They were actually known for using mass illusion, purported magic, and mysticism to recruit followers and intimidate local governments.
Oh, wow. Which completely reframes the entire performance.
It really does.
If you can convince a massive crowd of peasants that you have the power to steal from heaven, to casually reverse biology, and to resurrect the dead, you can easily convince that same crowd that you have the divine mandate to overthrow the emperor.
Exactly. Magic in the hands of a group like the White Lotus sect was ancient political propaganda. It was a tool to undermine the perceived absolute authority of men sitting in red robes. The narrator is left wondering if this random street performer was actually a covert agent or a descendant of that subversive sect, basically just testing the gullibility of the local magistrates. And the source text leaves us with a lingering psychological question, one that applies just as much to modern scams as it does to ancient illusions.
I'd love to hear it.
When those four imposing officials reached into their red robes and handed over that gold, did their minds truly believe they were funding a dead boy's funeral? Or, in that quiet moment of relief when the boy popped out of the trunk, did their massive egos silently accept that they were simply paying the admission price for the greatest piece of psychological theater they had ever witnessed?